Hello everyone and welcome to this next instalment of the Inspire series at Framlingham College. Today I'm going to be speaking with Daisy Cooper, a Liberal Democrat MP who was recently elected at the 2019 general election. They took the seat from the Conservatives and it's the first time the Lib Dems have taken this seat since the Liberal Party in 1904. Daisy is the Liberal Democrat spokesperson for justice and for digital culture, media and sports. She is also Vice Chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Climate Change and Vice Chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Beer. Before being elected, Daisy was Campaigns Director of More United, who encourage MPs to work cross-party in Parliament, no matter who is in power, and lead campaigns supported by More United members all over Britain. She previously worked in international affairs for 10 years, campaigning for LGBT plus rights and against human rights violations in Sri Lanka and Zimbabwe. She has also worked in press reform. After the 2019 election, The Guardian named Daisy as one of the new MPs from all parties to, in their words, watch out for. Welcome, Daisy. So as you can imagine, Daisy, we've got lots to talk about, lots of questions. Let's just jump straight in. Let's start with life in lockdown. I think that's something that everyone at the moment is kind of in the same boat with. So, just a couple of thoughts about how you've been finding it at the moment.
Sure. Well, I think generally what I've experienced as an MP is that everybody's experience of lockdown is really quite different. And for some people, it's just been a bit of a blip. And for other people, it's been an absolute tsunami in terms of how it's affected them. On a personal level, I've had about a 6-fold increase in the number of constituents getting in contact. That means I've been doing about 10-hour days and at the peak of the crisis, a couple of 16-hour days, which were pretty tough. But there's a lot of people with a lot of questions. So me and my team have had to really step up.
Yeah, I'm sure that doesn't surprise me. The sort of the questions coming in from all over all parts of the country, all different questions coming in for different reasons. But yeah, that sounds really. I guess it's a struggle to try and keep up with that sometimes, isn't it? To try and keep on top of all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so we set up a system for dealing with the number of inquiries we were getting. Of course, when you get very individual queries, like people who were stranded abroad without money or medication, we had to deal with those individual cases and those individual people in their personal circumstances and what they specifically needed. The same in some kind of housing and immigration cases as well. But for a large number of people, they often had very similar kinds of queries. And because of the sheer volume of the numbers of emails coming in, we couldn't answer them all immediately. So I just started, we basically looked through all of the emails that were coming in every day. We made a summary of the issues and then we did a daily bulletin saying to people, if you've emailed us today or in the last 48 hours, you will find the answers in the daily updates. Okay. If there's anything missing, let us know. And we're reading every single email. We can't reply to every single one. And so I was sort of sending out fairly long sort of daily updates for the sort of 2 or 3 week period when COVID was at its peak.
So you've certainly been kept busy then.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. So I guess let's start here again. Before we get into your career and what you've done as subsequently. Let's start with the time and the connection to Framlingham College. I'm currently sitting here looking out at the college. I haven't been here actually for a long time. Obviously, I've been at home in lockdown as well, teaching from home. So it's really nice to have been able to come back here, and I'm looking out at the cricket square now, and it's looking nice and green. And it'd be nice to be back here soon. But you were here in the sixth form, is that right?
That's right, yeah. So 3 of my cousins went straight through the ranks through the whole of Fram College, but I joined just for the sixth form. So I was here from 97 to 99. Okay,
so what were your memories of your time here, and can you tell us a bit about sort of the impact that the college had on you?
Sure. Well, I've got some good memories. I had a really great time at Fram. At the time, I became head of house in upper sixth of Pembroke, and Pembroke was just shifting from being for day girls only to the first year where we had some people who started to stay over. I studied music, maths, and English, so I absolutely loved music, and I got to perform a solo concerto in the music hall and spent a lot of time in the music rooms playing about with the pianos. And I guess those are my sort of fondest memories of. Do you still have the singing competition where each house has a
house
song?
singing? Yes, yeah. No, that's a definite highlight of the year. Yeah.
We had a great version of American Pie, I think.
Oh wow! Yeah.
And obviously we had the musicals as well. So I quite liked all the musical side of things.
Yeah, no, it's certainly a really real kind of asset that we have here at Framlingham College. Yeah, certainly is. So it's nice that you've been able to enjoy that. What did you sort of what did you like about the college in terms of its was it its setting? Was there something about the teachers, or what other things were there that kind of attracted you?
Yeah. Well, I had been to State High School at Bungay High School before I came to Fram, and I had a great time at Bungay as well. But obviously, one of the very wonderful privileges that you have at Fram College is the smaller class sizes, and that does mean that you have a lot more contact with your teachers, and you can really dig into the subjects in the way that you can't when you have much larger classes. Having all the open space was just wonderful. To be able to go for a run and go for a jog roundabout was great. And I often cycled in and around Framlingham as well, because I only lived about 10 miles away. So occasionally, if I wasn't being driven to school, I could bike in and out as well.
Wonderful. Good. So I guess we can move on from there to then talk about maybe how you transitioned from the college into university and beyond. So when you were at the college, was there a political kind of path laid out for you? Were you talking to teachers about sort of the idea of going into politics, or what were your conversations like in terms of the next steps you were taking?
Party politics didn't really arrive on my agenda until I was about 27, 28. So when I was at Fram, really the major thing was focusing on my A-levels, working really hard and working out what I wanted to do at university. So I applied to lots of different universities, ended up going to Leeds. I was choosing for some time between doing a music degree or a law degree. And it was a real tussle between the two, because I think my heart was really with doing a music degree, but my head was with doing a law degree. So I did follow my head. I followed my head and I went and studied law at Leeds. I did a master's in international law at Nottingham. And that was really, to be honest, because I was lucky enough at Framlingham to be on a full scholarship. For the first 10 years of my working life, I wanted to prioritise financial security. So I took lots of sensible decisions in the kind of jobs that I took and worked hard. And that set me up quite well, so that by the age of 30, when I was more financially secure, I was able to reduce my working hours down to 4 days a week and spend 1 day a week on more of my own personal interests, which is partly sort of property development, partly music, and partly politics as well.
Oh, a nice variety.
Yeah.
That's great. So going back to the university years, the sort of the time at Leeds and Nottingham, which is actually my old stomping ground. I did my undergraduate in philosophy at Nottingham. It's a lovely place. So what were your sort of experiences like there? And can you try and give some advice to maybe some sixth form students here who are thinking about their choices and about universities, and why did you pick Leeds and Nottingham?
Well, you're going to regret asking this. I went to lots of different open days at different universities, and I spent a lot of time and effort researching the different departments within different universities, because you can look at how a university is ranked, but each individual department has a different reputation for different kinds of things. And I went to lots of different universities for the open days. I did a lot of research, and when I went to Leeds University, the Vice Chancellor said that students who leave university leave with the biggest debts. And everyone looked horrified, and he said it's because they have the most fun. So I was sold on that basis. So I was sold on that basis for my 3 years at Leeds. But also,
being honest.
yeah, absolutely. But as it turned out, Leeds had an enormous community of lawyers. Some of the really big law firms that were based in London were branching out and starting up branches in Leeds. There's a huge number of barristers' chambers as well. So whilst I was studying, I was also able travel in sort of in the study weeks to go and do sort of mini pupilages with lots of different barristers' chambers, and I got a lot of experience. By ultimately over 3 years, I did about 5 or 6 of these different mini pupilages, which is like a week work experience with barristers, learning a lot about criminal law and things like that. I was a bit more sensible about my choice to do my master's degree. My choice there was that I had enjoyed doing law, but I decided that I didn't want to become a lawyer. Okay. I really enjoyed international law, which had more politics in it, more international politics and foreign affairs. And so I did a lot of research and was choosing between a university abroad and Nottingham University, because they were both 2 of the best university departments for international public international law. So I was more sensible about my choice for Nottingham, and that served me well.
Yeah, sounds like you did your research. The decision you said about decision not to do law, and go into international, was that just something that intuitively you kind of realised over the time, or was that quite a big decision for you to kind of make that path?
So I think when I had decided to study law, it felt like a very sensible decision, and it was really because I wanted to make sure that I would have some job prospects when I left university. Mine was one of the first years where tuition fees had been introduced, and it really felt like it was really important to get your money's worth out of your education, and so I think during the course of the 3 years, there were lots of solicitors' firms that came and did presentations about what it was like to work in a solicitor's firm and what it was like to work in a barrister's chambers. And I guess I felt that being a solicitor, there was a lot of repetitive work, which is fine for some people. A lot of people enjoy that kind of structure, but that wasn't really great for me. I would have loved the idea of becoming a barrister, but that's quite it's a tricky path, because it's very competitive, but also you don't really get a decent salary for quite a number of years, so you have to live off your own reserves. And so I had studied international law as part of my undergraduate for just one module, and it absolutely sparked my interest. I absolutely loved it, and I thought, right, this is the one bit that I've been studying that I really, really, really enjoy. Did my research, realised that there were plenty of job opportunities by working in international law and international diplomacy and international affairs, and realised that actually this was a route where both my passion and sort of good job prospects coincided.
Well, I was going to say that's a fortunate position, because we always talk about studying and doing what you're passionate about, but for that to align with sort of economic security as well, it's almost like everything's falling into place there, isn't it?
Exactly.
And so how long were you working in that kind of area? How long was that?
So it was about 10 years. After I finished my master's, I spent 10 years working in international affairs in lots of different organisations, but broadly speaking, working for various Commonwealth organisations. So there was a Commonwealth Secretariat, which is a bit like an international civil service. So I'm sure many of your students will have heard of the United Nations and the European Union. Yeah. Well, the Commonwealth also had its own international secretariat, and that happened to be based in London. So I worked there for a few years, working in their strategic planning department, which meant that we had to look at the money that we were being given by various governments. Mm-hmm. We had to work out how best to spend it in a way that provided value for money for taxpayers, and had the best development impact in various countries, and reported on that back to various governments. So that's what I did for a few years. And then I think in my mid-20s, I started to get that campaigning spark. I started getting more interested in the news, both in the UK and abroad. Realised that there were lots of different injustices that I cared about, and then having then left the role of being a civil servant, I then joined a think tank and a campaigning group where I started to campaign against human rights violations in Zimbabwe and in Sri Lanka, and campaigning for LGBT rights abroad as well. So I did that right through until about 2011, 2012.
I mean, that sounds like there's a lot to talk about there, and we could go on all night talking about your experiences. But is there anything in particular in those sort of areas, the human rights areas and the LGBT plus areas, that you want to just highlight? Any kind of major moments or really kind of life-changing experiences you had there?
Sure. I think there's two things. One, the first thing I say is one thing that isn't really life-changing, but might be a useful lesson, which is that when I worked as an international civil servant, it was about 300 people working in the organisation. It was very hierarchical. and I found it quite frustrating. A lot of people really like that kind of structure. They like the pace, the slower pace at which things move. And when I moved to a campaigning environment, you do everything from speak to a prime minister to buy the paper clips, because you're working for a much smaller organisation, and the strength of your campaign comes down to how hard you work and how many people you talk to. So it's a very different working environment. What I learned through that process was that I, on a personal level, I'm really suited to working in very small teams where you can make a decision and then within a matter of hours, you're executing the campaign. Lots of different environments are very different from that. And so I think there was a lesson that I learned about the kind of working environment that I really liked. In terms of a life-changing moment, I'd say that it was a real education for one particular thing. I don't know whether you remember the Arab Spring revolts, and lots of the Arab Spring was the uprising of citizens who were calling for greater democracy in their own countries in Northern Africa. And there were rumours at the time that this could spread to other parts of Africa. And there was a group of activists in Zimbabwe who had got hold of a video of the Arab Spring uprisings, and they were reported to the secret police and arrested and beaten and tortured. They were locked away, their passports taken, unable to see family members, and they suffered some really awful torture at the hands of Mugabe. And so I worked with colleagues in London to raise some money to try and provide for them to come to the UK to study at the University of London. We successfully raised the money, we campaigned, we lobbied the South African High Commission and the Zimbabwean Embassy in London. I think it was one particular woman, there was a few of them who came over to the UK, but one particular woman who came to study with me, and it was extraordinary to hear of what she had been through and to learn of her utter integrity and her real strength of conviction for the things she believed in. It was quite an extraordinary experience, and very educational about standing for the things you believe in. Yeah,
that's really powerful. I mean, it certainly shows that campaigning and doing these things can work, right? You know, it's often people get very cynical about that, and they think, oh, you know, what can you do to make change? And but that's wonderful to hear such a, you know, going from a terrible situation to a fantastic situation based on, you know, campaigning work and what you can do to lobby certain areas. So that's good to hear.
I mean, I should add that ours was a very small part of the puzzle. There were lots of people campaigning in Zimbabwe who were doing the activism on the streets and all the rest of it. Ours was a very small piece of the puzzle, and the credit goes to those campaigners in Zimbabwe. But it was brilliant to be able to play our part. And I think that's one of the enormous lessons about campaigning, is to recognise that you are part of a broader movement of people. And when you get a broader movement of people working together, that's when you really get change. Yeah, and that's an important message. So that's fantastic. Can you just then talk us through the steps that it took for you then to become an MP? So you know, what made you think, right, this is the next step for me, and how do you even go about doing that? And how did that? Can you just take us from that till, I guess, the 2019 election where you got elected? Sure. So I had grown up in Suffolk girl, born and bred, and as you know, it's a sort of predominantly white area. I went to study in Leeds and sort of became aware of sort of slight race relation issues in and around Leeds. And then it was in my late 20s when I suddenly heard the Labour government talking about stop and search and about its strategy for tackling homegrown terrorism. And I was really appalled to hear a government minister, quite frankly, of any party, talking in such divisive terms about tackling particular communities. And I, having studied law, felt very strongly about individual civil liberties and about the rule of law. And I was so horrified by what I heard. And this was a Sunday morning where I was a little bit hungover and decided I was a bit cross at what I was hearing on the TV. Dangerous combination. Yeah, exactly. And I just thought, you know what? First of all, I listened to this woman speaking on the telly, and there were two things that occurred to me. The first was, if government ministers are talking like this, where do we end up in terms of the state of our country? And then the second thing that occurred to me was, I think I could do a better job than her. So I knuckled down and I thought, well, I think I'm a Lib Dem. I voted Lib Dem. I don't really know what the Lib Dems are about, but I'll do a bit of research. I researched all of the three major parties and thought, yeah, I'm definitely a Lib Dem. So I joined the party. I went along. I got an email saying, come along to your local party and meet some people. So I did. I told them that I was interested in becoming an MP. They said, here's the application form. And every different political party has a different way of recruiting candidates. So it's very different in every different party. But in the Liberal Democrats, it is based on competency. So you apply.
That's good to hear.
Yeah, you have to. It's a bit like doing a job interview. You have to explain, you have to explain what your experience is and how it meets certain competencies on a form. You have an assessment day. Then you apply to a local party to become their candidate, and then you campaign up until the general election. So that's what I did. I stood for election in Suffolk Coastal in 2010, which is my very first experience. I was brand new. I had no idea what I was doing. And 6 months out from the 2010 general election, I thought, I could be an MP in 6 months' time.
Yeah.
I had no idea that there were things called safe seats.
Yes.
Where, they tend to stick in the hands of one political party.
Yes.
But I learned that pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And I realised that I probably wasn't going to become an MP, but I decided instead to use it to cut my teeth. So I learned a huge amount from campaigning, stood at some subsequent elections, ended up washing up here in St Albans in 2016, became their candidate. And through two successive elections in 2017 and 2019, I then got elected as the MP.
Fantastic. I mean, and that, I think that's where I just want to go on to focus on is this recent election where you became an MP, because having looked back at some of the recent elections there were traditionally either Labour or Conservative. I think it was 1904 going back to the Liberal Party.
That's right. Very good.
Yeah. And that must have been a huge win to take that seat. Can you just describe for us like that night and when you found out and how that was for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, it all started in 2016. I won't give you the whole 4 years in great detail, but in 2016 there had been the EU referendum. St Albans had voted 63% Remain. And as a committed Remainer myself, I had thought, well, these are the group of people who kind of share my values. I'd looked at the voting history in St Albans, and as you say, they had voted both Conservative and Labour, and had almost voted Liberal Democrat in 2010. But what I realised was that it was a very kind of centristy vote. So when the Conservative Party was a centrist Conservative Party, St Albans voted with the Conservatives. And when the Labour Party was a centrist Labour Party, then St Albans voted Labour. And I thought, well, actually, those two ends of the spectrum are generally liberal. So a small L liberal. You have liberals in every political party, just to different degrees. And I thought, looking at St Albans, the way it voted in the referendum, previous elections, I just thought, well, St Albans is just full of liberal people. These are people who have liberal values, and they just don't realise it. If I told them enough times, then maybe they'll vote Liberal Democrat, and they did. So it was partly me working out the choice of the seat and working out that this was a seat that I thought I could win based on my shared values with the people who lived here. And then it was a lot of community campaigning. So one of the things about politics is that obviously you go into politics because you want to win political office and you want to bring about change by getting elected, whether that's as a councillor or as an MP. But even before you reach an election or get elected, there are lots of things you can do in your community. And one thing that Liberal Democrats are sort of well known for is their community campaigning. So we had lots of problems to do with business rates, which meant that lots of the pubs were closing down. We had problems with the trains and the commuting. And I had organised members of the community to campaign, and we had secured quite a lot of change. We got some extra compensation out of the government, those kind of issues. And so I think I tried over a number of years to build a reputation as somebody who was active, who shared people's values, who could fix things in the community. And ultimately, I think people decided that those were the kind of attributes and values they wanted in their local MP.
That's certainly. I was going to go sort of building on that question. So when you were in that process, were you very much aware that you needed to be seen, or at least be seen, like you said, to be active and seen to be doing things? Was that very much kind of a part of what you sort of strove to do?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you know, our electoral system for Parliament is first past the post.
Yeah.
And under a first past the post system, voters basically have two choices. It's whoever's in first and whoever's in second.
Yeah.
Right. And it's very unusual that other parties manage to break through.
It is.
Now, I'd managed to break through in 2017 to get into second place. And so the last election was really a choice between the incumbent and me.
Yeah.
And when you have that kind of clear choice, part of your campaigning strategy is to explain how the two of you are different. So because the local MP didn't live here and I did live here, I played the fact that I lived here and I shopped here and I commuted from here.
Yes.
She was a Brexiteer, I was a Remainer. So that was obviously another divide that was provided a very clear choice for constituents. And as it happened, it wasn't as strong a part of the pitch by the 2019 because for a lot of local people, however they'd voted in the referendum and however they'd voted before, a number of people just wanted a local constituency MP who lived here and shared their lives and could see the problems that they were experiencing every single day. And so a large part of our vote came from that.
So you fit the bill.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then you're now an MP. And I guess this is a question that a lot of people probably want to know. So if you could give us the sort of best answer you can.
Okay.
What does MP actually do, Daisy? What do they do?
Good question. So there is no manual on how to be an MP. And a lot of MPs tackle the job very differently. And there's probably 4 or 5 different parts to the job. And different MPs can choose how much of their time they want to spend doing different bits. So I'll list the different bits of the job. Okay. So there's casework. And casework is people who need your help. And by and large, these are people who really need your help, normally only come to see their MP when they are really at the end of the line, at the end of the road. They've seen every other organisation. They've been to Citizens Advice Bureau, they've been to the council, they've been to the DWP or the Home Office, whoever they need to go to, and they've hit a brick wall because for some reason something hasn't made sense somewhere and somebody just needs your help to break through. And often it can be a breakdown in communication or what have you, but there are housing problems, immigration problems and benefit problems. And so that's the kind of casework that forms quite a lot of the work of what an MP does. Then you have other constituency duties. So people might sort of say it's, kissing babies and cutting ribbons. There's a little bit of that, but actually it's meeting all the various people who have a real passion for something they do. So, for example, when I was elected, I said on election night that I wanted to meet 100 local organisations in my first 100 days. I actually got to 82 before we had to stop meeting because of COVID.
Oh, okay.
But it was meeting.
That's impressive, though.
Yeah, but it was meeting Age Concern to find out what the experience of older people was in our community, and it was meeting youth mental health groups to find out what the challenges were facing young people. I went into a lot of schools to talk to sixth formers about their challenges in the local area. It was talking to environmental groups about their pollinator projects and the sustainability festivals. It was talking to train enthusiasts and vicars and lord lieutenants and all sorts of different groups of people, carers and all sorts. And that's really getting under the skin of the constituency. So you understand what people's lives are like, because actually, even though you might think you know an area, everybody's experience of it is very different. So that's the second part. Speaking up for what people believe in, I think, is a really important thing. So a lot of people email me not about casework, but because they want to know what I think about a particular topic, whether it's Black Lives Matter or the climate emergency, and they want somebody to speak up for them and represent their views. So even though you may not be changing anything by actually changing legislation, they want to hear that you are speaking up for them. Another part of the job is actually voting on law and legislation. So it is making law. Voting is only one small part of it. So within the Liberal Democrats, I'm the spokesperson for 2 briefs, the Justice Brief and Digital Culture, Media and Sports. And whenever there's new legislation that's being published, I normally speak to the minister at the beginning of the process to find out what it is they're trying to achieve. And if I have any particular concerns, I'll raise them at that stage. Then when legislation is introduced and it gets to a second reading, I might see if the government's prepared to adopt some amendments that I want to put down. And if they're not, then I'll put them down anyway, but I'll put them down in my own name rather than working with the government on it. And then that gets debated in the chamber. And that's the bit that people see on the TV. And I guess the last thing as well is being a champion for certain things. So you can pick a topic and say, I want to be the person that campaigns for saving a school, or building a new train station, or whatever it might be. So you pick an issue and you can campaign for it, and you use your office, your position of your office and your title to draw attention to a particular issue and campaign for something to happen. So it's a bit of casework, constituency duties, speaking up for your values, making legislation, and campaigning. There you go.
So in essence, enough to keep you busy each day.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's brilliant. No, that's really clear. Thank you for that. So you were talking at the end there just about sort of campaigns and things that you're interested in. What I mean, I guess to split this question into two. So what are your own ambitions within politics? Do you have kind of further ambitions that you want to achieve personally, but then also, for your constituency, for the country in general? What are your ambitions and goals, and what you would like to achieve with your office?
Sure. Well, I mean, I'll be honest, I'm 6 months into the job. And I'm still figuring out some of this stuff, but there's two or three things that I'm really keen on doing. The climate emergency is enormous, and it's something that we've only really got 10 years left to make changes before irreversible damage is done to the planet. So it is a number one issue, I think, for many parliamentarians. I've joined an all-party parliamentary group, which is a cross-party group of MPs who work together on climate change solutions. I'm one of the vice chairs for that group, and my specific focus is around trees and tree planting. Okay. So there were lots of big numbers thrown around at the time of the last election about, who was planting 30 million trees and who was going to plant 60 million trees. And the fact is that lots of different political parties made commitments about how many trees they wanted to plant, but nobody has a roadmap on how they're going to do it. So I'm championing that in Parliament. I'm working with a professor at the University of Leeds, actually, to try and develop a roadmap that we might then try and use to build political support from across all the different political parties, and see if we can get some progress on that. So tree planting is a sort of particular subject that I'm focused on more broadly. Another one, you might laugh at this one, but St Albans has a lot of pubs, more pubs per square mile than anywhere else. And CAMRA, which is the Campaign for Real Ale, started in St Albans. So pubs are a real part of our culture here. And they're struggling from a very kind of broken business rate system, which I know has hit a number of towns in Suffolk as well, whether it's Southwold or Woodbridge or elsewhere. And so that's something that I've been championing as well, trying to reform the business rate system so that smaller high street businesses can continue to operate and make a profit. And for that to happen in a way where places like Amazon, that have these enormous warehouses and have had discounts on their tax, might have to come up and pay a bit more. So there's a bit of a tax equality thing and a trees thing. Those are the two issues that I'm focused on for the next year or so, and then I'll tackle some of the bigger issues later down the line.
Yes, certainly. I mean, it was fascinating to read that. I had no idea that it was a parliamentary group for beer. So that was interesting to find out.
There's a parliamentary group for most things.
I'm sure there is. So I just wanted to pick on one thing, quite a recent thing, which was just kind of bringing you up to date a bit. Many people will have seen a new site in London, which was a MP conga line, as it was described. Can you just tell us a bit about that experience? You were in the line, right? You were, yes. Would you mind just telling us? Was that an odd experience? What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a great experience, I'll be honest. So, as you'll know, the country went into lockdown for COVID on the 20th of March. And MPs were supposed to be in Parliament for a further week before we had our sort of 1 week recess. So we have what's called recess. It's basically like our half term, right? It's to coincide so that MPs with kids can look after them. But we brought that recess forward because we were told we couldn't go into Parliament. It wasn't safe to do so. But we didn't have any way of conducting Parliament online. So Parliament effectively closed down at a time when we needed maximum scrutiny of what the government was doing. But then during the course of April, we established what we called a hybrid parliament. So 50 MPs could be physically present in the chamber and everybody else could take part from home. And over the course of a few weeks, we went from just testing whether or not we could vote to actually participating in debates and forming legislation, to tabling amendments, to tabling urgent questions on a day-by-day basis, to quizzing ministers. We did a huge amount of the participation that you get in Parliament. We could do it virtually from our computers at home, and it felt like a safe thing to do. The rules that allowed us to do that expired on Monday, and the government decided that it didn't want to continue with that model, which meant two things. MPs who had been shielding at home, or MPs that had childcare, basically couldn't go into Parliament. So they were disenfranchised and they were effectively silenced, them and their constituents. So they weren't able to vote on Monday. The rest of us had to go into Parliament, put ourselves at risk of becoming super spreaders, which is what we've been called before. And in order to vote, we had to stand 2 meters apart from each other. So there was about 400 MPs standing 2 meters apart from each other, trying to find the end of the queue in a building where no one had queued in the system before, and social distancing broke down. So there were lots of places where people got bunched together in corridors and turning corners and things, and it didn't really feel very safe. And I'll be honest, I was really angry about it. And I've been very open about the fact I've got Crohn's disease. It's a long-term medical condition. I'm lucky that I'm not in a high-risk group at the moment because I'm not on medication. But had I been on medication, I would have been shielding and I wouldn't have been able to go in, which meant that both me and my constituents would have been completely silenced. So the conga queue, I mean, some of us were kind of laughing a little bit on the way round because it was so ridiculous.
Yes, yeah.
And I do think that it makes us look a bit like a laughing stock, but I really regretted the fact that we had to do that. So there's been a slight improvement in that MPs who are shielding are now allowed to vote by proxy. The government has said that MPs who are carers for people who are shielding can't yet vote by proxy. So today my party has called for and secured an emergency debate next week to see whether the virtual parliament should be reinstated. Now, one minister looked very ill in Parliament yesterday.
Yes,
turns out he's tested negative for coronavirus, which is really good news for him. But of course, there was a real fright that on Tuesday we had scenes on the news of 400 MPs traipsing around the parliamentary estate, walking past each other, and yesterday one of them got ill. And we could have ended up in a situation where all of us were told we had to self-isolate for 14 days. So it's a bit of a ridiculous view, seeing us all queuing up, and I would much prefer to go back to the virtual parliament for us, until it is safe to return to Parliament. Now, people like me, I think that there's been a lot of benefits from moving to a virtual parliament, but I recognise that we have to go back to Parliament, but only when it's safe to do so and in accordance with the government's own guidance. So we'll see how that plays out in the next few days.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess this is an ever-changing situation, isn't it? But no, it was certainly something interesting to see those scenes on the news over the last couple of days. So last couple of questions, really, Daisy, if you and focusing back on sort of your work as a Liberal Democrat and that sort of idea. One question about kind of the election in 2019. Obviously, congratulations to you. You won your seat, but the Lib Dems maybe did not do quite as well as they would have hoped. So, kind of question about if you had that election again, what would the Lib Dems have done differently? And then also a question about. I had one from my year 11 politics student for next year who wanted to know that if you were going to be Prime Minister tomorrow, what would be the first thing that you would want to try and work on? What would be your sort of message to the country, if you like?
Okay. There's quite a lot of questions wrapped into all of that. So let's start with the election in December. So I think we had a very thorough election review of how we performed and the decisions leading up to the election. I think if we were going to do things differently, the first thing is probably that we wouldn't have called for an election. And there's some really, let's be honest, in politics and as in life, you often have to make judgment calls, right? And sometimes you make the right judgment call, sometimes you don't, and it's often only time that tells how things play out. I think with hindsight, if the Liberal Democrats, the people who were leading our party at the time, decided in their judgment that there was a very real risk that the Prime Minister was going to push us out of the EU without any deal whatsoever, and that if there was any opportunity whatsoever to try and stop that, as a group of Remainers, or to at the very least put any deal to a vote, that was a risk worth taking. So that was a decision that was made. I think with hindsight, if we had not plumped for a general election, then the gridlock that had existed in Parliament couldn't have continued for much longer, and we may have ended up, for example, with some kind of people's vote referendum or something like that early, in the early months of this year. So that's possibly one of the things. having called for an election, I think one of the frustrations certainly that I had was a slight mismatch, because, as I say, we have a political system which is first past the post.
Yeah.
In every constituency, voters can only choose their local MP, and they can only choose between really often two people. There's a few seats where there's three contenders, but often it's only two. And in a previous election, in the European Parliament elections, the Liberal Democrats have done really well in many parts of the country. But that's because it was a different voting system. And I think as a party, we got very excited that we had lots of people voting for us in all different parts of the country. But as a smaller party, you have to work much harder on the ground. You have to have more volunteers, you have to have more infrastructure. And we didn't have infrastructure in all of those places. So we obviously we set our ambitions quite high. I think we probably overstretched, tried to win more seats than we were actually able to. And it meant in the end, we didn't concentrate on a small number of seats that we could have won. And if that's more of a kind of internal tactical decision. And had we done that, we might have won. We might have gained a few seats, probably not as many as we'd hoped to, but we still might have gained a few more seats. And that's what we can carry to the next election.
Okay. And then the question about being prime minister, obviously.
Yes, that's
more
fun.
Hypothetical one, but yes. What would be the message to the country from Daisy Cooper?
Yeah. Well, goodness. If we're saying literally tomorrow, we are in the middle of a global pandemic. And I think what I would want to do is to try and capture public trust in the government. I think public trust in the government has been plummeting for weeks now, certainly not helped by the scandal around Dominic Cummings. But in the middle of a global pandemic, it is vital that the public trust and adhere to advice that is given by any government. And I think as a Liberal Democrat, one of my values is around open and transparent government. And I think if governments are open and transparent with the public about things that they know, about the science, about things they don't know, and why they're taking certain decisions, then I think that builds public trust, and the public are more willing to follow the guidance. And if we could recapture some of that public trust by providing a lot more transparency around some of the challenges facing government, and basically trust the people to realise that this is a really tricky situation. I think with more transparency, more open government, I would hope to drive up some public trust, which might in the long term help to drive more adherence, recapture some of the adherence to the public health guidelines, and hopefully save lives. So that's probably, if we're literally talking about tomorrow.
Well, no, take me at my word. Yeah, certainly. That's brilliant. Yeah, I think trust is a huge issue. Something that, if you can get that, I mean, there's a lot of power that can come in a good way from a level of trust. So literally last question, and this is again just trying to think about bringing it back to our students here at Framlingham. We're introducing politics next year. Really excited about that, and trying to really enthuse the students about politics. But what would your message be to students of 16, 17, 18 years and younger about politics, who may feel that maybe there isn't that trust, or they feel that they're skeptical of what government is and what they do? What message would you give to them about giving them a positive perspective on what government and politics is all about?
Sure. A lot of what happens in politics isn't seen. The stuff that you see on the TV, the stuff that happens in the chamber, the yaboo, shouting and fighting and bickering and all that kind of nonsense. I mean, I hate it, right? I absolutely hate it. And one of the joys of having a virtual parliament has been that we haven't had to deal with that, right?
Yes.
It's actually become watchable for a change. So I don't like all that yaboo culture, because I think it's outdated and it's unnecessary, and I think the public don't like it. Okay. There are things you can do in politics that have nothing to do with party politics. Yeah. The politics is about problems in people's lives that you can fix. So what I would encourage them all to do is to find an issue or a cause that they genuinely really care about, and then work out what they can do to help with that cause. So, for example, it could be mental health, right? If they really, really care about improving mental health, they could, for example, choose Mental Health Awareness Week or Children's Mental Health Week, which happens in February. They could decide to have some kind of exercise in the school with students where people talk about, mental health challenges, and they can tackle this issue about stigma. And there's lots of good examples about things that they can bring about change. Yeah. So politics really is about picking an issue and bring about some change. Again, if somebody cares about saving elephants in the wild, you can work out ways in which you can help, whether that's by raising money through, getting sponsored to go cycling, different things like that. So to anybody who's interested in politics, I would say, learn about Westminster, learn about the political system, but don't think that's the be all and end all. That's a tiny part of the political system.
Yes.
See something you care about, that you really, really care about, a burning injustice that gets you up in the morning, and then try and find a way of trying to improve it.
That's wonderfully put. Really, yeah, that's brilliant. Exactly what we need to hear, I think, at this time. Well, Daisy, thank you so much.
No problem.
You've been so generous with your time. It sounds like you're incredibly busy. So to find this time to do this for us is brilliant. And I'm going to make you promise that at some point you can come back and visit us at Framlingham College, do this face to face, and perhaps meet some of the students here and talk to them about things. So hopefully at some point, once all this,
I'll combine it with a visit to see my mum. She'd like
that.
Well,
there you go. Yeah, two birds with one stone. So once all this craziness is kind of passed and we can get back to some sense of normality. But yeah, once again, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. We wish you the best of luck with all your various ambitions and goals and things that you're trying to work towards. And we'll be keeping an eye out for you in Parliament, maybe sometime soon on the screen and everything else. So yeah, thank you very much. And
thank you.
We'll speak to you soon.
Okay, bye-bye.